But here's our guy Prescott, number 2 worst contracts in the NFL. And New Bear, I mean, I think this is a test for Cowboys fans. Like, how objective and honest can we be about our guy? Can you admit the truth but remain optimistic? And I think you can. I think this is just a reflection that the Joneses aren't that good at negotiating contracts, so Dak and his agent punish them for doing that. But it doesn't have to stop them from reaching their goals. You know, it increases the difficulty a little bit. Maybe you overpaid by 8-10% on your quarterback contract, but they can overcome this because Dak is still a really good player.
Yeah, and if you go back and you read some of the stuff related to not just the max, the $60 million, oh my goodness, what do you even call it? It's like there's resetting the market, and then there's blowing it out of the stratosphere into its own, right? And I say that just to remind myself to come back to what you were talking about the Bleacher Report is that if Dak were number 2, just to go through the machinations of the exercise, then there has to be at least a moat, if not a bridge or something that, you know, rocket ship base that you would put between him and Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson isn't just quarterback to quarterback, NFL player to NFL. It's like the worst contract in sports of all time, right? And it's so bad because of the guarantees. It's so bad because of all the things that you knew about his injuries coming into it, parts of his body that had just been completely destroyed. Beyond the scandal and the off-field stuff, he also admitted on air that he doesn't know how to read defenses, and he put himself in when he made the Superman play in the playoffs. He's just running around like a chicken with his head cut off, basically, out there. So all the reasons that add up to paying Deshaun Watson and the draft picks and the money and the guarantees make it so much worse than anything you would say about the average annual value, the total money. But then you start picking some of these things apart and you go, how do you guarantee someone like Tua, who, and there's no joking about this at all, but someone who may actually be playing with CTE, someone who has been through the very public and probably should retire from a player safety perspective, and you look at the percentage, the total and the percentage that's guaranteed, it's crazy to look at Dak coming off of an MVP runner-up, a playoff run, all the things that he was, coming back from the ankle, all the things that the team had done in terms of misusing the franchise from a timing perspective tag, and him being a 4th-round pick with him being willing to sit out. Oh, I passed on $100 million for $2 million. I passed on $100 million or 31, right, to get 31. And so, like, it just, the decision got easier and easier and easier for him to wait. And what's really frustrating about this whole thing right now is that there's the injury, and we have to wait and see.
Yeah, you know, we do have to wait and see, and I think that's a big part of why the ranking is correct, and it's unfortunate to be snuggled between Tua, who has less guarantees. They'll be able to get out of that contract after this year. It's going to be a $40 million hit, but Dak's looking at a 9-figure hit if you want to get out of that contract at any point over the next 3 years. And then you add the injury, you add the decline play that we saw in 2024 there. You know, and I think all of it comes together to give us an uncertainty about how good he is going to play, how healthy he is going to stay. And then if you do make the playoffs, his 2 career playoff wins, New Bear, are all part of this equation, you know, that I think makes it fair. Do you think it's fair?
No, the position by position, what sucks about it is that, like, Dan Moore Jr. is not a good football player. He got $50 million guaranteed. Dan Moore Jr. also not a quarterback, and we're talking about Dak Prescott's average annual value being more than, you know, Dan Moore's total guarantee. So it's all relative to a certain degree. But I would argue that Dan Moore Jr. is such a dramatically worse football player that the difference between like J.C. Horn's contract, terrible. When you look at, you know, some of the elements position by position, there's context, there's nuance. There's all that, but it has to come back to, is this dude a good football player? And none of these other guys, you have a Pro Bowl here, like Tremaine Edmonds had gone to a couple Pro Bowls in Buffalo, right? Tua was coming off a year where he had led the league in passing yards, this, that, and the other. Dak Prescott was runner-up in the MVP. Dak Prescott is the quarterback of America's team. Dak Prescott's a guy who, hey, happy Father's Day to all the dads yesterday. Every single team in the NFC East, he's their daddy over the course of the time that he's been the starting quarterback since 2016. The dude wins. The dude produces. The dude did get hurt, right? We talk about the average NFL career being 3.3 years, and his almost came to a tragic end. He came back. He actually rehabbed so hard he had to have another surgery. So you're talking about a dude who, if he does get hurt, has proven he can come back and has proven that he's going to put in the work, maybe even works too hard, maybe even cares too much.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points. He is a lot of those things. He did also get hurt by just extending to make a throw last year that was a little bit awkward. That's what tore his hamstring off the bones. So I think all of this is fair and relevant. I think it's fair to be excited about where Dak Prescott can take this football team, but also acknowledge that the Jones did a bad contract. I mean, it's 10% better, and the cap went up 10%, and it's still higher than any other quarterback by $5 million. And that creates a slight obstacle, but I don't think it means that they can't win a Super Bowl. It just means that, they're going to have to bite the salary cap bullet a little bit more and hopefully find the money in, to really go for it and build the kind of team around Dak that he needs to win a Super Bowl. Sure. You're going to see a lot of good plays. By the way, salute to G Witt here, the YouTube account, for posting the 2024 Dak highlights. There's a lot of good plays in here, but we all know at this point, 10 years into Dak's career, he is not going to carry a team enough that you could have a shaky offensive line that he'll make look good. He's not going to make so wide receivers, produce like Pro Bowlers. What he needs is a great running game and a really good defense. And if you give him both those things, he'll win a Super Bowl, New Bear. I'm really confident in that.
I would sit here as long as you would want to talk about how great Tom Brady is. He lost 2 Super Bowls because they couldn't protect him. Like, everyone has their kryptonite. Like, you can make the same thing you're talking about is like, if you keep Tom Brady clean, he's the greatest, and it's not even close, right? He has almost no movement skills. So there's things that you have to do around every single.
So, real quick, people, when I say those kind of things, they perceive them as a criticism of Dak. It's just reality. And the Cowboys aren't doing what it takes to build a championship team in 2024 in the NFL 2025.
Well, but let's table that part of the conversation just to put a bow on this element from a dollars and perspective, because we're talking about 2025 and going forward is fascinating because they've done the exact opposite of what you're talking about. And I can't wait to talk about 3 straight first-round offensive linemen, Jaden Blue, at all. But when you go back to just the dollars and cents of this, and I want to talk again about perspective, context, nuance. Like, Brandon Ayuk was an accidental All-Pro in San Francisco. And we're talking about this dude getting $76 million guaranteed, getting 100. Forget for a fact that he tore his ACL 5 minutes after he inked that contract, right? That you cannot tell me that Brandon Ayuk is worth that contract. You also can't tell me that Dak Prescott wasn't worth at the time when they signed this contract being the highest paid. When you go over the course of time and talk about guys like Joe Flacco was once the highest paid quarterback. There's got to be a conversation about how quarterback markets work and how every single guy, regardless of whether or not they're good enough, regardless of whether or not they're even the best in their conference, their division, the league, this is just how it works. And what's Todd France, the Joneses, everybody who was a part of this conversation going through it, athletes first and all the different things that came to fruition from the franchise tag at all, nobody had any problem with Dak Prescott being where he was because it's the Cowboys. This isn't talking about being batting ninth and playing third base for the New York Yankees and making more than the cleanup hitter who plays center field for the Milwaukee Brewers, right? Like, this is one of those things where it's America's team, it's quarterback, and the dude was MVP too, runner-up for MVP, and side by side, he was as good as anybody. So the trajectory of this is completely paused because he got shot by a sniper and his hamstring ripped off the bone last year. What we're talking about now is, how does this get right? How do you actually put himself in a position to do this one more time?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think they have an opportunity to do that with how a lot of the young players on this football team are coming together. I think the best opportunity is right now with George Pickens. And I'm hoping the offensive line is good enough that this team's going to be really good and they can make a couple additions in summer or maybe in the first couple of months of the season to improve the roster. Okay, before we get to some of the other talking points, and I want to address that, the spotlight of it being America's team, before we get to do all that, and we want to see your replies in the chat. I would like to say I'm by no means a Dak hater. You can check out our latest videos on his legacy if you would like to. I'm really pulling for Dak. I think the key for any team is answering how good of a team do we need to have in order to win a Super Bowl around this guy. And I don't think the Cowboys have ever arrived in January with a team that can run it and can stop the run. And I just think those are prerequisites So when you say Dak can't win in the playoffs, I say, well, Dak can't win with the Cowboys in the playoffs because of what they do. Then they blame it on him and say, we're going to go as far as Dak will take us. And I just think that's incredibly unfair. But you can't deny being on this list is tough, though. And it's, according to some people, accurate. I don't see a contract worse than the Cowboys other than Deshaun Watson's. And it takes a really horrific set of circumstances to actually be worse than the contract the Cowboys did. I'm not critical of Dak when I say that. I'm critical of the Cowboys. But Pro Football Focus does have him as the 17th best quarterback. And, he's the highest paid by a long shot. That's recency bias. They're just looking at 2024, where the Cowboys threw a rookie left tackle to the pass rushing Wolves. The first 8 games last year were against some incredible defenses. They were starting Zeke. They were starting Cooper Beebe, a rookie center who got a lot better as the year went on, as, Dak was struggling. But that happened. Dak couldn't save you from that. And I think that is a reflection of where he is at this point in his career. And, then I would just, take the conversation here, New Bear, and that is how much of Dak's early success, I'm going to put on some 2016 highlights here for you. How much of his early career success, that line, Zeke in his prime, and a soft NFC East historically over a sustained period of time really created this idea of elite Dak Prescott that I think the Cowboys bought into, setting him up for failure as he's hit this midpoint in his career. Go ahead and talk about that if you could, sir.
It's the star. It's because it's America's team, Cowboys Nation. Let's bleep and go. It's because we're not talking about him rising from being a 4th-round pick who everyone thought was just another athlete, just another running quarterback coming out of Mississippi State, who actually spent his senior year probably forcing some checkdowns to prove that he could do some of the things he would be asked of on Sunday, and rise a la Russell Wilson, right? Russell Wilson, 3rd-round pick, Dak 4th. And as you look at the rise and then being anointed early, Seattle versus Dallas or any of the other, I just go back and I look at guys like Jared Goff who are ahead of him on this list, on PFF's list in particular. And I'm a Goff fan, and I thought he got way too. I was really happy that McVay actually came out and basically publicly apologized for throwing him under the bus after they traded for Stafford, because the talk was, if you remember, when Stafford came and they basically swapped, was that he was the reason Goff was holding them back. And then you look at Goff take off and ascend with Ben Johnson and all those weapons around him in Detroit, and now all of a sudden that narrative changes. But what changed? Like, how much about Jared Goff changed if the players around him changed? The investment in the offensive linemen, the explosive dudes to go be able to do stuff. I mean, are we really going to talk about Jared Goff being a top 10 quarterback and all of a sudden Dak Prescott's garbage? Like Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, those guys are better than Dak Prescott. CJ Stroud was terrible all year last year. His line was terrible. His whole receiving room was hurt.
I think how poorly he played last year, along with the injuries, invites that kind. And then the numbers, how beholden are you to the numbers when you're evaluating a player? And, I think in this case, you got to bring in the context, and it's the PFF's just looking at 2024 performance here. That's
not true, though, because Trevor Lawrence was significantly statistically worse than Dak Prescott, and he's ranked ahead of him. I'm just so tired of every part of the narrative being, I'm going to make the numbers work so that I can push this guy down. The hate only exists because of the star on the helmet. When you look at the injury history, like you said, giving rise to it. When you look at the numbers, as high as 69.5 completion, career 67%. Like, what are we doing to this guy?
I don't know why people hate on Dak Prescott. I think there's a lot of reasons they could decide that he's not their guy. I think a lot of it is frustration with the team. And if he won, the fans universally would love him.
Sure.
I think it's a reflection of how much attention the team gets, but also the team doesn't really know how to team build. So he's arriving in the playoffs, To me, he's better than Jalen Hurts. He's better than Nick Foles. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's, at times played better than Matt Stafford. I think Stafford's a good comp, like a guy that can play top 5 when the good stuff is happening around him, but can also appear to be a top 15 guy if the circumstances aren't ideal. And the Cowboys haven't had the right coaches or the right personnel around him, to bring out a championship run. And, I don't think that's Dak criticism. I just think that's being, honest about who he is. But, I also think, New Bear, that all quarterbacks get super scrutinized. It's the NFL, Find me a quarterback who doesn't sniff the top 10 that isn't pulled, So is it bigger with the Cowboys? Yes. But I look around and I see a lot of quarterbacks going through, at one point or another, an absolute baptism of polarization as the criticism gets very loud and their supporters get dug in. Josh Allen has gone through a ton of that. He just won MVP. Lamar Jackson goes through a tremendous amount of that. So I just think that's kind of what all quarterbacks sign up for.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think if, Baker Mayfield's not tic-tacking and swagged out doing fun stuff and winning and in rooms with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and other dudes, Tristan Wirfs, dudes around him, he was run out of Cleveland. He was playing scout team defensive end in Carolina, right? Like, let's not forget how quickly some of this narrative can change, because when dudes get on planes and go win on Thursday Night Football after learning the playbook in 5 minutes, ultimately, if they win and they change culture, however they do that is accepted, right? Ultimately, however they do that is pushed forward. And I'm not hating on Baker. I'm a Bake Show fan, and I would actually say, right now, if you put them next to each other, Baker's the better quarterback. But when you look at this list, and again, I'm talking specifically about the PFF list, you can pick nits. They've got tiers, right? So you go Mahomes. Sure, does he belong in the elite tier at the top? But he's not number one. That's a battle between Burrow, Allen, and I guess you have to say Lamar just because that's what everyone else is going to say. But to your point, the guy who's leading the second tier is Hurts, and then Daniels coming off his excellent rookie of the year. Everyone's even more obsessed with him than they were C.J. Stroud. Stafford, to your point, is all the way up at 7 on this, and Stafford is one of those guys who's on the Mount Rushmore of arm talent. He's up there with any conversation you want to have, Elway, whatever, all time, right? And then his success has been determined
between him and Dak. Just give me the healthy one.
The healthy one, right? And then you would give Stafford the edge because he's got the arm and because he's won. He's proven that he can do it. Not just that if you surrounded him, but that when you did, he went and got the job did, right? So then you go to Herbert's a really interesting case because, like, let's really get into this. I'm a huge Justin Herbert guy. Was not a Herbert guy coming out because I thought he was just going to be another epic fail, classic Oregon Duck, overrated, Saturday guy. And then you find out that he makes his roommates, other pro guys, push their shopping carts into Sam's Club, and there's a lot of really endearing stuff, and you want to root for the guy. But let's be honest, he was terrible in his first playoff, and that's with Harbaugh. But then you go
when the pressure goes up. Every time I watch Justin Herbert, I just wait for the pressure to go up and for him to fail. I'm not buying it. I haven't seen it. I think you got to have some heart and some poise at the NFL level. I think he's the classic, got all the tools and is close with the intangibles, but can't bring it together.
And this will be interesting to see because he should have more threats, right? I mean, when Ladd McConkey's a really good player, but talking about him as wide receiver 1 and then there being falling off a cliff and guys who can't catch a cold after him, right? This is in terms of the Justin Herbert conversation and where he slots on this is a make or break year for him. Goff is one of those guys where you go, man, when he's really humming, he might go 20 for 22 for 305 and not even play in the second half. Like, that's how interesting that offense is. But then he also has moments.
The 5 years from 2018 to 2022, nobody would have picked Goff over Dak. Now, boom.
No chance.
It's Goff. That just tells me how important the surroundings are. And now Goff has got to play with 2 coaching staffs and 2 organizations more committed to winning and finding edges than Dak ever has.
Right. But let's continue scrolling here for a second, because are we gonna seriously overlook the fact that Geno Smith's a dude whose own teammate broke his jaw because he was that bad and that big of a pain in the ass.
I mean, you shut me down. You said that PFF's not waiting this for 2024. They have to have some sort of bias because Dak was runner-up MVP in 2023. All the numbers were glorious. You know, I just don't understand how you could make the case that Dak is so bad unless you're waiting heavily for what happened last year, which was rough. It was bad.
Right, but it's not like Brock Purdy was superhuman when McCaffrey, Ayuk goes down, McCaffrey's banged up the whole year, and everyone is just talking about how the San Francisco 49ers would be fools for paying this guy because he's a yak merchant, and now all of a sudden he's at 11? Like, he's almost we're still saying Brock Purdy's a top 10 guy? What are we talking about?
No, I'm not buying Purdy. I'm not. I think when the game gets noisy around him, his flaws will be exposed here in this second contract.
I mean, Jordan Love is a really, he's probably one of the more divisive guys on this list because when he's going good, you look at it and you go, man, what is the ceiling for this guy, right? And then with the injuries and the inconsistency that he's had around him in that revolving door of a wide receiver room and some of the changes that have happened, guys coming in and coming out, guys coming back from stuff and maybe not playing as well, and like less heralded dudes, late round picks becoming. I mean, there's some guys on that roster that are head turning guys in a lot of different ways. You got 6'4", 6'5" guys, then you got little dudes. They got every element, but they haven't had it all on the field at the same time. And he himself has been dinged up. You know, I already gave my thoughts on Baker. I'm a fan. I think you could push him up higher than a couple of those guys. You also have to.
Nobody would take him to win a game over Dak right now, though.
I mean, I think it would depend, though. Are you talking about Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, and Mike Evans, or are we talking about
all things being equal, Dak or Baker? We're playing equal. Sunday.
Yeah, all things being equal, no, not a chance. But this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because Stroud, product of environment. Kyler Murray, product of when does Halo drop? Trevor Lawrence, I mean, probably the most unconvincing start to a prince that was promised. Tua is, I mean, if he trips on his left tackle in the pocket, he might be in concussion protocol. Like what are we doing here? The fact
it's
that
pretty crazy, dude. That's where they have Dak slotted around. I mean,
insane.
Last year was bad. I expected to get much better, as we move forward, but it might not happen this year. This schedule might be so tough, and that is kind of a perfect segue to the next branch on our Dak Prescott topic tree. If you've made it this far, please like the video and leave a comment down below on what you agree or disagree with. Okay, you look at the record inside this division compared to outside. I think this Lions game last year that we can show some moments from as we continue with some highlights over here, thanks to the NFL. 33-8 all time against the division. Outside the division, 43-38. He's 18-16 career against the AFC. Dak's record versus teams with a winning record is below 500. Like, how do you reconcile all of this inside the context of believing that Dak Prescott's a top 10 quarterback capable of taking a team on a championship run? What do you say, New Bear?
Well, 3 of those 4 are still over 500. It's not like when he goes and plays the AFC, all of a sudden he's 5-29, right? I mean, 18-16, I think most teams would if you go down a list and you're like, damn, this isn't Ben Roethlisberger versus the Cleveland Browns or Dak versus the NFC East. If you go, the worst case scenario is overall I'm going to be a couple games over 500. Most fan bases, most team owners, most people would take that. And I think a lot of it comes back to familiarity when you're playing guys 2 times a year, for 10 years, like that stuff breeds success or failure. Like when you talk about the Browns versus the Steelers going back the other way, or early Lamar against the Steelers before they figured it out because the Steelers quit last year. As you go through some of these, I love watching this stuff too, because I'm always like, which 88 is that, right? It's always one of the most fascinating things about being a Cowboys fan. The haircut obviously helps, but like some of these guys and some of these plays and some of these throws, when I hear you say things like, they can't depend on him to be the guy that elevates you and takes you to the next level. But then you see some of the context, some of these throws where he's feathering balls. He's never been Matthew Stafford, right? He wasn't that coming out, and you wake up out of bed with that arm talent or you don't have it, right? So when you talk about his decline, it's more the physicality side of it is he's not going to be that guy that's going to go rip off 15, 17 yards and really make the defense pay. they're not necessarily worried about, hey, we're going to man press and turn guys loose because we can get home on this guy. We don't fear his legs, and he's not going to make us pay and go get 7 on 3rd and 6 and then pop up and hand the ref the ball like he might have done as a young man, right? But at the same time, if you got GP and CD, does he have to? If Blue has a day, if Blue gets on that O'Roy path, like we're talking about a completely different conversation with this guy. And I think that's what's really exciting about it is the question marks about guys coming back from catastrophic injuries all around the league and at every position. What we know with Dak is that he put in the work. What we know with Dak is he probably had to be told at some point, hey, take a day off. And he looks fit. He looked great, right, at minicamp, at OTAs. And coming into this season, he appears more motivated than ever to do one thing, which is whatever it's going to take to win.
Yes, and that might involve running. So let's turn the page here and get into the next chapter here. Dak Prescott. We've talked about a number of angles so far, but what do you make of these stats in light of the schedule that we just talked about, Newberry? And you mentioned doing whatever it takes. For a lot of people, that's running the ball and taking first downs, being willing to risk your body in a post-injury world for Dak Prescott. In 2016, he only ran for 282 yards. That remains his top total QBR season. Okay, and total QBR is a dang good way of evaluating performance. That was his rookie year. He's obviously become a much better player since then, and you want to get the most out of him from the pocket as you can. But, I think the running game is a big part of keeping defenses honest. But then I want to come up here and look at, the yard totals. That's 3,600 yards his rookie year. 2019 didn't make the playoffs with 4,900 yards.
Right.
Sacrificing is being willing to run, and it's being willing to snuggle up to a run-friendly scheme and not be audibling out every time you come to the line of scrimmage and see a heavy box look. Which is kind of a trap as you get to a veteran quarterback. You trust his decision-making, but do those decisions prevent you from being a team that's capable of establishing the run and giving him the looks that allowed him to post a 77.6 total QBR? Here we go over here, his rookie year. So a lot to digest there as we look at his statistical profile as a pro in these last 9 years.
Well, but the thing that's fascinating about it is, Dak's a guy that ran it over 200 times as a junior in college. Dak's a guy who the question going into his senior year, the reason that he went back was to prove that he could sit there and throw little swing routes to running backs coming out of the back. I mean, honestly, it's fascinating to go back and think about how far this guy came from his junior year in college to his first year as a rookie in the NFL. And what he's done since day one is be a very, very efficient and also accurate quarterback. We talked about Joe Milton last week about how typically guys don't go from being inaccurate to being accurate from Saturday to Sunday. He did it all on the fly. He did it all as he grew and learned to be an NFL quarterback. It's really a remarkable thing to see. You look at a guy like Trevor Lawrence, it's the exact opposite conversation, right? You look at some of these guys who who are ranked ahead of him on some of these lists, and that's why it's an insane conversation to me. But coming back to the running side of it, Dawson, I think the most he's ever run in a season, 75 times? He's typically in that 50, 55, right? That's typically where he is about 3 or 4 carries a game. And
yeah,
and I don't
he
think
had
he's
the
ever,
1 year 75. They were
75.
Starting to get weak in 2018. He ran more that year, ran more the next year, and then in 2020 he got hurt. He was still running it 3 times a game, and he has basically been holding that pace or even a little bit more in a couple of these seasons. Last year though, it did fall to less than 1.5 carries per game. So that that's interesting. It can't be that low, I don't think.
Well, and we've talked too about whether it's Turpin or even Lamb coming on fly or jet, right? Because they will get under center and do some really fun things off play action. Whether it's Joe Milton coming in some fun I think they're going to find ways to be really creative because they have a ton of team speed, and they also have dudes like Blue coming off of his college career where he's used to being in a timeshare, like Turpin, who's just itching, begging. I think we're all dying for that dude, for them to find ways to get the ball in his hands more, especially if you've got CD and GP dictating some of the architecture of the defenses that you're going to see. I think they're going to find Shoddy's going to find some really creative ways to get other dudes involved to bring some of those because what we're talking about is 2 or 3 or 4 plays a game. And whether that doesn't necessarily have to come from Dak, that can be manufactured off of things that your quarterback might do or that your run game might do off of it. What's interesting is some of the reports like from Cowboys.com that we shared, that we linked to, in our articles last week about, Dak being not just cleared, but executing and running every part of the offense, including rollout, including run, including play action, including rollout. And it's just like, if that's the case and we're not worried about the hamstring at all, and he's going to come out the gate and they're going to be running boots and waggles and some of the old school stuff while at the same time, they're not going to all of a sudden be running quarterback draws. He's not going to all of a sudden be playing, Q run series like Lamar does in Baltimore. But they also, just the threat of it, where if he keeps it and rolls out and flips one into the flat with some of like a duo insert with Schoonmaker, slipping out into the flat and having like a back-breaking play on 3rd and short. Even some of those things are enough to keep the defense at bay and to keep them honest when it matters most.
It's a good plug for our website, howboutwow.com. Please check us out if you're still watching. If you could like the video, that would be so outstanding. And if you leave a comment, we love to engage throughout the week and throughout the day, having these conversations continue in the replies. Okay, you might have noticed I was bringing up the postseason stats over here. Let me share this screen once again. Okay, that's the next branch of the topic tree, really. Key playoff matchups. Over the years, Dak performance has been a little bit inconsistent. Is this a Dak problem or is this a Cowboy problem, New Bear? I mean, punching this up here, you're looking at 14 touchdowns and 7 picks.
Right.
But
2-1,
and just 2 wins against teams they were clearly better than. I don't know. Let me jump over here to the game log and see if we can, get a better look at what those games are. If you want to go through them, I'll find those. But, playoff Dak, and I know a lot of his criticisms, including Zach Wolchuk, who I do the G-Bag Nation with 2 to 7 every weekdays on your home of the Cowboys, 105.3 The Fan. He's of the belief that the shocked Dak that we saw in the Niners and Packers games, where he was just like a turtle on his back, couldn't get up. The offense was totally incompetent. He sees that as a reflection on the player and just not having whatever it takes to be amazing in the game's biggest moments. I would say even in defeat, he's looked great at times. The comeback against the Packers in 2016, obviously the win against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. No other quarterback for the Cowboys had ever beaten Tom Brady. Okay.
You beat me. I mean, he ended Tom Brady. He literally ended the dude's career.
I mean, you know the good stuff that's happened for Dak, and those numbers aren't horrible. You play one game, you have 254 yards. You play one game, you had 403 yards. And I know some of that is going to be dictated by game flow. But I see, again, the Cowboys' biggest problem with winning postseason games is in their run defense and their inability to run it consistently.
Sure. I mean, Tom Brady threw for 505 and lost the Super Bowl to Nick Foles. I mean, shit happens. Tom Brady... Talk about Father's Day. I mean, Eli Manning's out there making jokes about being Tom Brady's daddy. That's the world we live in. Hashtag facts, right? I mean, the stuff that I come back to is when you talk about the circumstantial moments, the most damning one was, I think, for me 2021. It's 2021, right? 2022. No, 2020. I always trip up for a minute because the games are played in January. So it's 2021, 2022 playoffs, 2021 season is the 49ers one, right? Because that's the one where he goes they're throwing stuff at the refs, and there's the thing with the refs where it comes down, there's a questionable call and he gets fined at the podium, which if we're ever going to talk about contracts, shout out to his agent for getting rid of that language about the same stuff that Shamar Stewart, that poor kid's going through with the Bengals right now. These teams that are trying to get that language in these contracts about being able to void guaranteed money if you ever get fined, they would have been able to void Dak's guaranteed money because of what he said at the podium after that game. Even $25K fine could have cost him $100 million. But anyways, that game, because when you look at a game that you lose and it comes down to a play, and like so many of these things do, that's one of the reasons I hate game flow, game script, and everyone talks about, we had to start throwing it in the second quarter when we were down 7, because the games always end up being one score, right? So you lose, 19-12, and it comes down to one play. Scoring 12 points in a game that you're going out on your podium check writing ass on is like that's the opposite of how they lost to the Packers. So what's challenging for Dak in the playoffs is that it's not just one thing. They found ways to lose games multiple ways. They found ways to get a knockdown, drag out, slobber knock type. Oh my goodness, this is going to come down to one play, and then it does. And they found ways to throw pick sixes and get run out of the building and be playing from behind and have the game really be over by halftime. And so, when you look at it, it's going to take him going on a run. It's going to take him because when he beat Brady, they were what? They were 8-9. I mean, they were the worst team in the playoffs.
They aren't good wins. Okay, so this is how that season ended. This was with that weird play that the Zeke thing, where the snap, and it was just that sucked. And then the year before, where they're running and couldn't get the playoff, and is the official in their way of trying to get the ball down, and you hand the ball to the ref, you don't, leave anything to chance. So, I mean, it all goes to, I believe, what the criticism is that in these moments, Dak's not the quarterback that can say, hey, I got us. Okay, everybody calm down, give me the ball, I'm going to make the play. It's crap. What are we doing, coach? Oh, I'm going to try to do this super fast, and oh, it didn't work, and oh no, we've lost again. But I mean, like, his ability to make comebacks, I think at one point in his career was really high, New Bear. I think right now the confidence in that fourth quarter comeback factor for Dak is not high. I wouldn't have any faith that he's going to make the plays. Would you?
No, and it's. I mean, you go back the rookie year. I mean, what was it? The 18-point fourth quarter against Green Bay, right? Where then A-Rod got him with Mason Crosby, got him at the gun, right? I mean, he had those moments early, which I think gives you further. You just go, where did that go, right? Because you're like, if you come in and you have that ability, you show that ability early. Even if you come up short, you go, well, he's 22, he's got his whole life ahead of him, or he's only a rookie and he's going to learn, and if he showed he could do this as a rookie, what's he going to do when he's a veteran and he's got complete command and they open up the offense and give him control? And what's challenging is that everything has changed around him. So as he's there's kind of like a Jay Cutler in Chicago element, right? Where it's like you finally get the quarterback, but you don't have the defense, or you finally get the receivers, but you don't have the line, or whatever your favorite, whatever your hometown is, wherever you're thinking about, quarterbacks where, you give up the farm. But the thing is, they didn't do that, right? This is a fourth round pick that they built around and they've rebuilt around. And now here we are going into 2025 with 3 years in a row with first round offensive linemen, with GP coming in opposite CD, with a really interesting running back room, with a really interesting tight end room. And I used the line in article that we were sharing out today about how for the first time in Brian Schottenheimer's career as a quarterback's coach, OC, or now leading man, every position on the all-22 has a dude that they're bringing to the party.
I love it, man. Just great stuff. We're really looking forward to this summer and this build up to training camp with you. As New Bear just mentioned right there, you can read our stuff at howboutwow.com. We'd love to see your take. Is Dak still a top 10 quarterback? Has the spotlight made him look brighter than he really is? Tell us in the comments down below. New Bear, what do we have this summer going into training camp? What are the plans for howboutwow.com?
Just to keep pushing the progression and getting the shovel out and digging even deeper. I think what we're finding, meaning you and I, is that as you do something that's interesting and fun, and you're playing with music and different ways to attack, pop culture-y stuff, it makes something monkey banging symbol in my head pop up a story idea. Or if you write something, it makes me want to argue with you a little bit, or even just come back and kind of applaud you and say, hey, good game, and give you a little pat and say, I want to build and let's get into this. So you're going to start seeing, parts 3, 4, and 5 of different things, like as we unpack the quarterback room. And then I think we talked about going, position by position in the run up to Oxnard as they make, changes. If there is another trade, if there is another addition to the team or not, what does that mean about the players that they have? What does that say about the schemes they're running and how they're getting acclimated? And what is 25 really shaping up to look like heading into that showdown with the Eagles?
Articles every day, howboutwow.com. Shorts every day on YouTube and TikTok at howboutwow. Cowboys on TikTok. Please come over there and give us a subscribe if you like swiping there. Okay, we'll probably be back Wednesday or Thursday with another long form. And until then, how about wow?